So I'm happy to go ahead and share my story. As I told you a little while ago, what story? When you're 64, almost 65 years old, you have a lot of stories, but I guess this one is pretty important. In the year 2000, I was out running with a friend and had a traumatic brain injury. And I lived my life always really in the future. I never was somebody really in the past, but I was always looking for what the next thing was, and always I love being involved in things. So I feel like I had a pretty full life, and had no complaints. It had its regular ups and downs that all life does, but I would say I was always looking for what the next thing was. And then a lot of things that they want to do in these times is give you medications for that. And although I'm not against that, nor do I judge anybody else for that, but for me, that just wasn't the avenue, the path I wanted to take. I wanted to see what other modalities were out there to go ahead and explore.
Welcome to Miraculous Transformations, conversations about powerful practices that create powerful transformations. Join me as I delve into stories of change and explore the tools and practices that have helped people navigate their paths. You might just find some you'd like to try yourself. Thank you for joining me, Jill. It's really great to have you here. And I'm just going to share a little bit about how I know Jill. So, we went through a meditation teacher training together. Well, actually, we didn't go through the teacher training together. We went through the mindfulness in the workplace training together, but we both had the background of the meditation teacher training. And we chose to become colleagues because this can be a little bit of an isolating situation to be teaching and not have a group of people that you're working with. So we decided to start meeting together once a week and sharing ideas and developing programs together. And so we've been doing that for what, almost 4 years now.
It's you kind of lose sight of time, but I probably has been.
Yeah, close somewhere between 3 and 4 years, and it has resulted and developed into a beautiful friendship. And I really treasure our time together. And so I'm excited to have you share your story today. And so I just did an introduction. Would you like to add anything to that?
No, I absolutely have loved every minute. When you meet people that you feel like you can grow together and that they start out as one thing and it evolves in something else, I feel like that is really a gift. And our friendship and our meeting, when we had something in common, came to include so many other things. So I'm happy to go ahead and share my story. As I told you a little while ago, what story? When you're 64, almost 65 years old, you have a lot of stories, but I guess this one is pretty important.
All right, well, go for it. I'm excited to hear you tell it.
Okay. So I have been in the fitness and wellness industry for, oh gosh, going on 40 years. I owned a large fitness and wellness center. I started out as just a fitness person, ended up going into partnership with the people that own the fitness center, my husband and I, and we ran and had a business that was fitness, wellness, martial arts. In So that was in 1990. And then in the year 2000, kind of lose track of my years. In the year 2000, I was out running with a friend and had a traumatic brain injury. And I lived my life always really in the future. I never was somebody really in the past, but I was always looking for what the next thing was, and always I love being involved in things. I love being involved with people. I love being involved in community. I love being involved in business, family. So I feel like I had a pretty full life, and had no complaints. It had its regular ups and downs that all life does. But I would say I was always looking for what the next thing was. And then, boy, can life smack you in the head there. And literally, for me, it was a smack in the head. But I was running in my neighborhood at about when the time was changing in October, so that it was getting dusk. And it wasn't dark, but my friend had gotten off from work. And we were out running. And that's the last thing I remember. I remember thinking, wow, this is going to be a beautiful sunset tonight. Just the way the sky looked, it was just so pretty. And that's the last thing I remember till I woke up in a hospital. I didn't realize why I was there. Um, but it came to find out that I'd had a traumatic brain injury. I was hit by a cyclist. It happened to be I was running with my running partner, but the people in the community knew me. They knew that I wasn't right, and I was trauma hawked. And I spent about a month in the hospital, um, trying to go ahead and rebuild. There were so many things that occurred physically and brain wise that I needed to learn how to recreate. One thing I couldn't control was I couldn't control my emotions. I had a lot of other maladies that went on, and a lot of things that they want to do in these times is give you medications for that. And although I'm not against that, nor do I judge anybody else for that, but for me, that just wasn't the avenue, the path I wanted to take. I wanted to see what other modalities were out there to go ahead and explore. And so I did cranial sacral therapy. I did acupuncture. I did, oh gosh, I'm trying to think of what other things that I did. But one of the things that happened when I had this traumatic brain injury is the part of my brain that was affected, the occipital area, is where your vision is. And I lost my peripheral vision on both eyes, although your nose is in the middle, so it's not so bad on the left eye. But on the right eye, I lost like 95% of the peripheral vision, of which you can't drive when that happens, amongst a lot of other things. And so I really lost my freedom also to be able to, just go on my own and take care of things.
Yeah.
So when I came across meditation, I was like, wow, this is something that I can do by myself. And so I started meditating. I think I used apps I found on, probably wasn't apps at that time. Geez, when I'm talking about 24 years ago, it was probably CDs. Now I'm dating myself, right? It could have been cassettes for all I know. But I was using, I think it was CDs. I think I was using CDs, and then Oprah had a 21 day. I think Deepak Chopra was the first one. Then Oprah teamed up with Deepak Chopra to have a
Yeah.
21-day meditation.
I've
Right, right.
done those before.
Yeah, yeah. And I was like, wow, I really feel different. And of course, when I started to feel really bad, I was using my other modalities too. Acupuncture was great. I started to recognize like what was happening to my brain, the changes that were being affected. And it's really interesting being in the fitness and wellness industry. I would notice that when people came in, how they looked when they came in and how they were when they came out. So I understood that from a physiological standpoint and my background in the fitness industry, but I was really fascinated how it really changed people's brains.
Mm.
So I ended up saying, wow, this is working for me. And I came across actually somebody that I knew from the fitness center who um, had taken a course in in meditation training. My husband had passed away unexpectedly, which was really traumatic, and I was really also um, so grateful for the fact that I had this tool in my toolbox to use. So I realized that meditation wasn't like wait until you're feeling bad to go ahead and use it. It was something that needed to be on a regular part of life, just like brushing your teeth or washing your face or the other things we do on a regular basis. So I had moved downtown when my husband died, and of course I had lost my ability to drive, so I needed to be somewhere where I had a little more mobility. And in my building, this person that worked out in my fitness center, she was in my building and she was offering a meditation class on the roof. And I said, oh, I'm interested. I want to support her. I knew who she was. And I said, let me go. And I was really so empowered about it. And I started to talk to her and she said, oh, yes, I just went through this meditation teacher training and it was really fabulous. And so I course got on and I said, I really want to learn about this. And ended up going through which you did too, Katie, the same course, although we weren't in the same graduating class at that time. I went through that and I found it was really, really impactful. I found for a number of reasons. Number one, it taught me what I love about the way that we were taught is we weren't taught one modality. We were taught and we were made to understand in the 200 hours, for the first 150 hours, it was really learning about yourself. It was really not out there, it was in here. And so for me, I spent that time really noticing and recognizing the changes and all the different modalities. So you understood more about the science. So you got to really understand what was happening in your brain, in your body, those things. But then I also realized how many different modalities there were within the umbrella of meditation. And it just
Yeah.
fascinated me. And I went through the training and I thought that that was absolutely wonderful. And really, it, it made me recognize that it isn't like I do this when I feel bad. It's that it's a lifestyle change. And the same
Mm.
being in the fitness industry, I used to tell people it's not like exercise or eating or diet should be an exception to the rule. The rule should be this is the way I live my life. And the exception to the rule would be like, okay, when I don't, I recognize I'm going, against what I know is healthier for me and better for my mind, body, and soul, and I'll go back to doing that. And we had this kind of warped sense of reality in our world for many of us that it's just like that's a diet I'm going to do, a thing I'm going to do for this temporary, instead of
Yes. I love that that flip. I mean, it seems obvious, but it's really good to draw attention to it.
yeah, if you don't change your lifestyle, then you're just doing something for a predetermined amount of time. The success rate is not as great.
Mhm.
So for me, I thought that was wonderful. And I, thought I can apply that into what I did for my work and then recognized that it wasn't going to be an opportunity for me to be from a business standpoint, because although I started this from a purely spiritual standpoint and from my own health and my own well-being, which is, I think, where when we learn in our world of mindfulness and meditation, Katie, is sure that we've spoken for all these years, it really has to start inside here.
Right.
So many people are out there trying to find out what's there, but if they don't first look and understand and know who they are and what they need, it makes it more challenging to go ahead and try to help anybody else.
Right.
What do they say on the airplane? If put your mask on first before. I mean, that's an old saying, but it really makes true. Is that if we're not taking care of ourselves, it's hard. So then the pandemic happened, and
Mm.
it was like, wow, we were, of course, we don't have to hash out what happened there or whatever, but it was a really fascinating to me to look and observe how many people were so busy worrying about a reactive thing versus what do we proactively do to stay healthy, and
Mm.
where can I put myself into there to go ahead and benefit. And one of the things that I did was I offered a weekly meditation, connection and meditation, social connection and meditation, because we were missing very important components. And once a week, we would meet on Zoom and we would talk for a little bit and then we would meditate. And it was really, really powerful. And I thought, well, that's a great thing that I could give back to the community. But then one day I came across my feeds from the same teacher that ran the school that we went to, that you also, and that's where we met, Katie, was a mindfulness at work. And I realized, wow, this is not just meditation. Mindfulness envelope, it has an umbrella that covers a lot. And I often utilize the analogy. It's like a toolbox. We fill the toolbox up, and how do we use it? And so, and then with that, I can make a much bigger impact on a great larger audience. Okay,
Mhm.
so that if there were more people, then we can do that. And so I went through that training, and I found that it was really beneficial to be able to help so many people, and they were open minded to listening to that.
Mm.
And then it made me realize also that my background also is I'm a realtor. I've been a realtor since the early 80s. And I dipped in and out of that as a career path. At one time, my husband and I were building homes, and so we were able to utilize my broker's license for that. But it kind of dipped in and out. And in the last couple of years, what I've recognized is that how much that can apply to my the part of my real estate career, the part
Mm.
and I'm noticing and recognizing, especially the company that I work with right now, that they also recognize that. So I'm so excited to see, as you and I talk about, Katie, how many people are starting to recognize that learning how to be present in this moment and not be worrying about what hasn't happened yet, or only just learning from the past, but not dwelling or causing that to impede us from being present and enjoying what's happening right now. And, I often say to people, I hope that you don't have to have a traumatic brain injury or a trauma in your life to go ahead and make that change.
Yeah.
Little tiny bites, make little tiny, it's just having this awareness that and desire, an awareness and then a desire. And then the other thing that you and I speak about often, Katie, is that people also have to do the work.
Right. Yeah, I know that's the I think I find that to be one of the hard parts when I'm teaching is not getting people to do the work, but actually like pointing out you have to practice in order for it to work when people are saying like, "Oh, it's not working." It's like, well, but I really, from you, I've gained this really great ability to connect it to physical exercise and talk about like, well, it's, we're building our mindfulness muscles, just like when you go to the gym and you have to practice and build your muscles. It's the same type of thing. And I use that languaging a lot. And I think that lands really well with people.
Well, I think so too, because for a lot of us, when we know we all know we need to work out. So some of us do, some of us don't, whatever. But there's no doubt that everybody understands how important physical exercise is.
Yeah.
Not recognizing how much it's important for your mental well-being, your brain health, as much as your physical health. But when you go and you haven't worked out, and then you go work out, what happens? You're really sore.
Right.
Get reminded how much so. I think people can relate to that. Our job is how do we make ourselves relatable? How
Yeah.
do we go ahead and how do we look at it and be so open-minded that we're not trying to pigeonhole anybody that should be one thing. And that's the joy of what our training and the experiences, because life is about lived and learned experience.
Right.
So, besides what we've learned, having lived so many things, I find it really beneficial to go ahead and say, how can now I apply that into first my own life, and make changes by listening to what other people say that I go, oh, well, that makes sense. So
Mhm.
being really open-minded to go like, I'm not stuck in, it has to be my way in my place of business. I would have manager meetings and I would sit down or I'd hire new people and I'd say, I want to hear what you have to say. Your perspective is different. You're out there. And I said, and trust me, if you tell me something that even that you is different from what I feel, I will not fire you. I probably will give you a raise. I said, because we already know what's in our mind. And we may be super bright, super well learned, and super lots of experience, but still it isn't the perspective somebody else sees it at. And if we're going to be better as human beings, if we don't see the world from other viewpoints, then we're still staying in a very sheltered, no matter how much education we have, book knowledge, there's nothing
Yeah.
like actually experiencing something to be able to, or hearing about somebody else's experience to be able to
Yeah.
form, new thought patterns.
You're one of the people that I know that does that in my life, that does that the very best. Like we all say that we want other people's perspectives and we want to hear what other people have to say, but you like really live that. Like I remember you telling me that you have a group of friends that you get together with purposely that have different perspectives on politics and the world events, and y'all get together so that you can share them with each other and hear each other's opinions and learn from each other. And I just think that you do that so well.
Thank you. It's it's a passion for me. The thing that you and I talk about, Katie, is that for me, I'm a natural optimist. That's just, I mean, so that's the whether, nurture or nature. By nature, I guarantee you, I was born an optimist. And I always see it's not a matter half full or half empty. It's totally full all the time until like all of a sudden I go, okay, I guess it's not possible, but I think anything's possible. I think the biggest challenge that I have, is trying to understand somebody who isn't naturally that way. So it's taught me. So I thank you for saying that. But the reason I want to get together and do that is because I can't see things just from my husband used to say to me, you want to live in a glass bubble. And I said, no, I don't. I said, but I don't have to sit there feeling like everything is doom and gloom. We talk about it. We're wired for negativity bias. Thank goodness we have learned through neuroplasticity, science has shown us that we can change.
Right.
So the thing is that we need to then make the effort to change.
Yeah.
So hearing other perspectives. So for me, because maybe I'm an eternal optimist, maybe sometimes I have to see the other side of what the pessimist, I need to see a little more of that and see whether or not it sets out to be actually what I believe is true, so that I'm not sitting there in my bubble, and I don't sit in a bubble, but I just don't like to spend as much energy, because for me, what I recognized from having this traumatic brain injury and from the healing that went on is that without the modalities that I had, when you're here and you're nice and level and you go up here, coming here is okay. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
But if you go from here to here, okay, all the way down there, you got me, I'm all the way down.
Yeah.
Okay. It's harder even to get back here, never mind to get back there. I mean,
Yeah.
it is a struggle. So staying kind of here is nice, and having fluctuations that go up and down and getting back to a baseline that's healthy. But for me, when I got down to the bottom, it was stressful on my family, it was just not a good thing. And so I learned how to go ahead and do this as a survival tool.
Mhm. Yeah, that
And
makes sense.
then I apply it because of all of the training that I have and the experience I have and all of the experience I had working with clients and individuals in both the for-profit and nonprofit world. It's been very interesting to see things from so many different perspectives. And I mean, in my opinion, as we speak about it all the time, Katie, is that's what makes a beautiful, colorful, vibrant world. And I was just talking with somebody, one of the people that run the real estate organization that I'm part of, the Corcoran Group, and we were talking about the fact of that, how important that was, to go ahead and share that and learn from different people. And when you get organizations and people that also believe that, as we all need to band together. There's so much more good than there is bad out there.
Yeah, one thing that I think I've loved about our journey together is we came together over this, through this mindfulness in the workplace. For me, what it did with our weekly meetings was it made this a part of my like regular vernacular and what am I talking about all the time, and it made it easier for me to speak about these things. But I think one of the journeys that we've taken is like, how are we going to reach people? Who are we going to teach these things to? And I think it's really beautiful that really recently we've both kind of settled into going back to a career that we had before being a mindfulness teacher and realizing, like you said, that mindfulness is not separate. It is something that is part of everyday life and can be infused into absolutely every industry, everything that we do. And so we are both starting to figure out how to kind of merge together, me with the background with the schools and you with the background with the real estate, and bringing mindfulness into those spaces. And I think that that's really interesting that we've both kind of evolved towards that in similar timing.
No, no, for sure. And, I think we've been proof that, I mean, you've traveled around the world, and I have responsibilities with, multitude of things, and we make it work. In other words, we make it work. We don't find how it can't work. We find how it could and allow ourselves, I always use it when I speak with, the people that I work with, is being the water, not the rock. And you know what? If you bump up against the rock, just go ahead and just kind of ease on way. And, and sometimes it's going to be really turbulent and sometimes it's going to be calmer. And those are all part of what makes us human.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thanks for sharing that journey.
Yeah, no, but it is quite a journey. I mean, I think that everything in life is a journey, isn't it?
Yeah.
And the question is how you want to make that journey, how much you want to pack for it, how much you want to unpack in it, how
Mhm.
comfortable you want it to be, how not comfortable, and there's no right or wrong. I think it's back to what I said at the beginning, is that go inside yourself, find who you are and what you really want, and everything else will kind of, when I say the universe, I always tell people, universe will allow things to happen, at least in my opinion. I believe that. But you have to be an active participant. You can't sit there thinking,
Right.
oh my God, it's just going to be out there and it's going to happen. You need to kind of be an active participant in the process.
Yeah. Yeah, I've
And
heard people say that action is the language of our 3D reality. So we have to take action to communicate to the universe what it is that we want to allow in. Action towards those things.
that's the truth. And take responsibility for our own selves. And I think that's a really important, that we all need to be responsible. That was the one thing that I recognized with, my husband's passing, and realizing that, no matter what had happened to me, and I'm blessed to have two children and four beautiful grandchildren, and, and my mother is still alive. And, you know, although we all are there to help each other, the bottom line is, if you want to stay independent, you need to make sure that you're really taking care of yourself first.
Yeah, that's a good deep life lesson. Well, Jill, thank you. Thank you for sharing your journey and your story, and I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Katie.
All right.